Hey everybody. If you're like me, then you're very old and life's kind of fallen apart. But don't worry about any of that. Today we're talking about the PS1. Yes, the PS1, my favourite console of all time. I've got so many memories with this console, and I needed to do a video on it. Just a nostalgic video, no like history of it or anything like that. Just the nostalgic memories in this console. And I'm sorry about this one. This is a broken one. You can tell it's discoloured, and you can also tell a broken one if you check inside. It's filled with babies, so do check your units before you try them. Yeah, I'll keep them inside. So yeah, so I thought I'd gather some of my buddies and we'll talk about the PS1. So here's the first one.
Boom! Sony's PlayStation. I tell you what, I have very fond memories of this. In fact, I'll bet everybody does who had one back in the day, frankly, because my God, this had all the games on it, didn't it? It really did for a period. It's also one of the few examples where excellent marketing and an excellent product kind of meshed, and the results, well, speak for themselves. I mean, it's still like one of the world's major consumer brands to this day, isn't it, PlayStation? And for good reason. So I didn't have one when they first came out. I looked at what games were available for it and what games were available for the Sega Saturn, and of course bought a Saturn because it had all the games I wanted and the PlayStation didn't at that stage. Of course, 14 seconds after I bought it, that changed immediately. But the period where I had a Saturn and a PlayStation is probably my favourite period I ever had playing video games, because I had all the fighting games on the Saturn that I bloody loved, and all the other fighting games, and all the other games in general on the PlayStation. And my God, they were good days. I had a job, so I could actually afford to buy games, so that was all good as well. I can remember going into the Dixons in Norwich and buying what I think was the last PlayStation available in the city. I went around everywhere trying to get one, because I'd just been paid, basically. I was right, PlayStation time. And everywhere had bloody sold out, except for one small branch of Dixons. Yay! Thank you, Dixons, which now no longer exists, or it's like merged into Currys and PC World and Farm Foods or something, I don't know. But yeah, what a time it was. Bloody hell. So many games that I played for so long. Not all of them great. I can remember buying a game called Robo Pit for almost nothing and playing it all the way through, and it was surprisingly good fun. It was just this daft little sort of cartoony game where you build robots and put weird weapons on them and fight. Wasn't a terrific amount of variety to it, but it's good fun for what it was. I think I paid like 15 quid for that, and probably that was a good purchase for the amount of enjoyment I got from it. This bastard, though, this totally blew my mind at the time. The depth of it, and the characters, and the graphics, and the sound, and everything just came together. We don't have to say much about Final Fantasy VII. Everybody knows everything about Final Fantasy VII, but like, my God, it was the biggest thing in the world for a period, and for good bloody reason too. Resident Evil I never got on with. I remember being very disappointed by that. The tank controls I found difficult. I had some fun at the start in the mansion. Then there's all the slow bits with the doors coming. Just never clicked with me. In fact, when you do that bit where you go outside the mansion and go back in, and now there's like frog monsters that can decapitate you instantly, gave up then. Enough of it. Enough. I think I played Star Gladiator more than I did Resident Evil. And that's bloody saying something, because Star Gladiator is a weird, very slow sort of fighting game. I still have quite fond memories of Star Gladiator, actually. There's a sequel on Dreamcast called Plasma Sword, Nightmare of Bilstein, or something absolutely bizarre like that. And the characters move much quicker and can jump higher, because they all felt like they were made of lead and chained to the floor in Star Gladiator. But there we are. Good old Tenchu, and Tenchu 2, which I also loved. I don't know, not quite as good a game from a design point of view, perhaps, but they fixed a couple of control problems from the first game. But my God, so much fun. So fiddly when you go back to them, but totally worth getting back into again. There's no feeling quite like running around the rooftops, jumping down, and killing a guard, and then running off again before you get seen. And then jumping over a dog and, like, fighting on a Kagi and all that kind of stuff. For two-player stuff, well, except no substitutes from Bishy Bashy Special, of course, one of the finest collections of weird-ass minigame arcade games ever created. Spent so much time playing this with friends, it was unbelievable. Micro Machines V3 got a good airing as well. I think overall it's probably not as good as one of the Mega Drive versions. The problem is I can't tell the difference between the Mega Drive versions now. I'd have to go and play them again. But, we still had an awful lot of fun with this. And who remembers the nice piano music? on the level with the restaurant. I think it was the second time you played the restaurant setup, and yeah, it had this nice bit of piano in the background, which I believe the person who wrote it put out a sort of a clean version of it some point on the internet. I'm sure I've got an MP3 of that somewhere. So yeah, the PlayStation, bloody fantastic. And that is why I still have my original PlayStation to this day. It's a complete lie, this isn't my old one at all. My old one broke, just stopped working one day, and I had to buy another one. Oh, I did keep the shell of my original one though, which I was going to use to make a clock, you know, put some hands in the top. But I could never bring myself to do it, because I mean, it would technically be a clock, but it would also be a mutilated PlayStation, and that's a crime against God.
So my first memory of the PS1, I'm pretty sure, was my uncle had a PS1, and I think it was Tekken 2 was the first game. It could have been free, but I've got a feeling it was Tekken 2 because I played 3 after, and Tekken 3 is my favourite of the Tekkens because it's so good. But I think it was Tekken 2, and it just felt so different from all the other games I've ever played, because before then, the very first game I ever played was Rampage on my uncle's Amiga, and then I got a Commodore 64, and then a Mega Drive or Genesis, and then my uncle got the PS1, and it just felt so different from everything else, and it was just so amazing. Like, this was the new technology. It was so good. So yeah, the first memory was Tekken, I'm pretty sure Tekken 2, and yeah, it just blew my mind. And I needed a PS1 after that. And I remember, I don't remember the exact year I got a PS1. I think it was 96, 97. One of those years. I can't remember exactly what year. It could have been a bit later, but I'm pretty sure it was 96 or 97. And I remember it was Christmas Eve, one of those years. And I couldn't sleep because back then, Christmas Eve, I could never sleep. I always thought I couldn't breathe and stuff because I was so excited. So I remember I could hear noises downstairs. So I thought I'd slowly sneak downstairs. Not all the way, just to the bottom of the stairs to listen to what noises were happening. And I could hear my mum saying, "Shoot it, shoot it." And my dad saying, "I'm trying," and stuff like that. And I didn't know what was happening. I could just hear that, and I could hear like weird noises and stuff. And I thought, that's really strange. I wonder what that is. And the next morning, I got a PS1. And the first game I got with my PS1 was a game called Heart of Darkness. So, yeah, Heart of Darkness. Not very good at reflections. But it had a 3D part in this game as well, which is really cool. But yeah, Heart of Darkness. And I remember setting my PS1 up later in the day and trying Heart of Darkness. And it was so cool looking and everything. It's a really good game. You should try it if you haven't. And I was hearing the noises in the game from this kid who had like an electric gun thing, and it was the exact noises I heard the night before on Christmas Eve. So my parents were trying out the PS1 the night before, and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, there's always been a fond memory of just my parents trying out the PS1 the night before they gave it to me.
Hey guys, just want to take a quick thank you to OddPod for essentially letting me join this video, because it's an honour, in all fairness, because PlayStation is pretty much where I started in my full gaming journey, and that is something that is dear to my heart. So we're going to go through 3 of my favourite, or should I say first in gaming, because I suppose you can call it a first for me. Now, the first one in general is probably the most generic game you can come across, but it was my first 3D platformer. And the game in question is Rayman 2. Now, this has had more ports than anybody should even consider playing, but this version is the one that I played. Now, there is a superior version of this on the PlayStation 2, Rayman Revolution, but this is where I started, and this is the one that I hold dear. I love this game to bits. It's challenging. It's also one of those games that does get you to scratch your head a little bit at times, but it's an absolutely great game, and it's the first 3D platformer that I actually completed, so that's where it holds a place in my heart. Now, I'm hoping everybody likes a good racing game. Me personally, racing games are pretty much half of my gaming time. Things like Need for Speed, Gran Turismo, Ridge Racer, even a game called Split Second, which is on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, they are brilliant, brilliant games. All generally arcade games, but Gran Turismo isn't. And I never thought I'd get into something so serious that no matter essentially what you do to your car, it will have an impact. But I did with one game, Gran Turismo 2. It hit hard when I first played this because it's a very challenging game. Not only that, the first time I ever played this game was at a friend's house on multiplayer. And when I bought it for myself, it literally dragged me in. I could not stop playing it and I loved every moment of it. But that multiplayer aspect was brilliant. This particular version comes with the arcade and GT mode as well, which is always great. Now, I'm going to be honest, I've not played much of the arcade side of things, but the simulation side, I was at home. So much at home, loved every moment, and it's one of my favourite racing games to this day and still holds as one of my best PlayStation memories. Now, everyone has their favourite RPG, and while I admire the more common RPGs that people pick, for me, there's a certain game that made more of an impact than, say, well, for instance, Final Fantasy VII. Everybody's favourite. Or even Final Fantasy IX. And in some cases, for a lot of people, Final Fantasy VIII. But the thing is, as much as I loved these games, there was something that happened at the end of the PlayStation's life that kind of surprised me. And I didn't see it coming. I didn't expect it. The first two Final Fantasy games and 4 and 5 all came out on compilation discs. My favourite out of those two is Final Fantasy Origins, which is 1 and 2. Now, this is something that I just love because these versions of the games have been remastered with the first CGI cutscenes in them, and I just found it so amazing that these games work so well on the hardware that it was for, and the fact they added stuff to it, that blew my mind. Just to see the pixel art with the CGI cutscenes, it was brilliant and I loved every moment. But this still stands as one of my favourite Final Fantasy games, just for the fact that it came with both. Loved every moment. So there you have it. Those are 3 of my favourite PlayStation games and memories and how I got into those series. And honestly, it's just the simple things in life. The things that you remember are the things you treasure. And that's what I've kind of always lived by where my gaming days are concerned. So there you have it. Thanks OddPod again for having me on your channel. And for all you guys out there, I hope I've suggested some good games to you. In the meantime, take it easy.
So my favourite PlayStation memory is this. Simpsons Wrestling. I had so much fun playing this back in the day. Okay, that's it. Okay, bye.
Hello, OddPod! You wanted some memories about the PlayStation 1? Well, here's a couple that I had. So we were a bit late getting the PlayStation 1, late 1996, and that's because we were a bit of a delayed family anyway. We had our ZX Spectrum up until about 1993. The PlayStation 1 blew my mind. The 3 games my brother bought with it was Soviet Strike, Crash Bandicoot, as well as Worms. And those 3 games, absolutely amazing. Great fun. Spent hours playing them. But it wasn't until about November 97 that my first real exciting memory appeared, and that was Tomb Raider 2. And I remember finding it in Games Master magazine and just being blown away by what it looked like. And then even more exciting was a week later, my brother brought it home. It was just wow. And I think probably the biggest memory about that, other than the fact that it was one of the first games I completed on my own, was that we had to go and buy an official Sony memory card because the cheap game memory card we had, every other week the save game would be deleted, and it was just so painful watching all your progress on Tomb Raider 2 just get deleted in one go. So yeah, we had to go and buy the official PlayStation memory card, which I think was about £20 at the time, so it was quite expensive. But the only other memory I can really tell you about the PS1 was I remember going down the road and buying the PlayStation official magazine because it had a 5-minute demo of Grand Theft Auto 1, which we'd only heard about because the news was saying it's going to be banned, it's the world's worst game, it's evil. And we played that 5-minute demo over and over again. And actually, me and my 2 brothers, once we'd got GTA 1 and we bought the full game for the PlayStation, We spent hours on that, just as brothers sat there, just seeing who could run over all the Hare Krishnas, who could last the longest before the police busted them. It was just really, really fun family memories, playing a brutal game. But that was the PlayStation 1. Those are the two memories that are just kind of the most for me. The Tomb Raider 2 ones, with just being such a wonderful game, and GTA 1 just bringing us together, sat on the sofa, sat on the floor, playing on the little portable 14-inch TV that we were playing it on at the time. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Looking forward to seeing the video. I'll see you soon. Bye.
One of my main memories of the PS1, and it's such a weird memory. I want to know if anyone has a similar memory to this. Please let me know in the comments, because it's such a nice little memory. But every time I think of PS1, one of the first games that comes to mind, the very first one, is Monster Rancher, which I'll show you right here. Monster Rancher is the very first game that comes to mind because it's my favourite PS1 game. I love this game so much because I was big into Pokemon, Digimon, and stuff like that, so Monster Rancher was way up there, and I still love Monster Rancher to this day. Yeah, so Monster Rancher is the first one, but the second game that comes to mind, and I don't have it in my collection because it's a bit pricey and I need to get it sometime, is Rampage World Tour, because Rampage is the very first game I ever played in my whole life, as the Amiga one, my uncle's. So I got Rampage World Tour years later on PS1, and I played it a lot, like a ridiculous amount, but the main memory of that is I played it whilst listening to South Park's Chef Aid album. And if any of you have heard South Park's Chef Aid album, it's one of the best albums of all time. It's such a good album. And yeah, I remember just having headphones on, listening to Chef Aid on repeat, that album on repeat, just playing Rampage World Tour, like for hours and hours and hours every day. And it's such a nice memory because it's like, I think it's during the summer as well, so it's nice summery, like the sun outside and me not going outside. We just sat on the floor with a little box like VHS TV combo thing, and just playing Rampage World Tour whilst listening to South Park Chef Aid album. Like, such a good memory.
Alright, I'm Chris, and my good friends at OddPod have asked me to go through some of my favourite PlayStation memories. Most recent one being this shirt. The first PlayStation 1 game I ever owned was Disney's Hercules. We count the ways I love this game, right? Okay, yes, it was the first, so it's probably got a lot of nostalgia for me, but it's a really good platforming game because you've got ridiculous voice acting, which was kind of new at the time and revolutionary. If you've seen the film, you'll know that it's one of the funniest and best Disney films to this day, and they captured the movie in the game perfectly and made it playable. And unlike a lot of movie game crossovers, it actually controls quite well and is actually quite fun as a platformer. You know what I mean. Next, I'm going to do what I consider to be the best PS1 game. It's Metal Gear Solid, isn't it? There's nothing you don't already know about this amazing game, okay? It's revolutionary, it's brilliant, the series continues to this day, it's fabulous, but the best thing about it is my childhood memory of my friend Tom discovering Metal Gear Solid over the weekend. This was the conversation on Monday in the lunch queue, right? I've played an amazing game for the PlayStation. It's the best game I've ever played in my life. Really? What is it? Metal Gear Solid, it's the best game there's ever been. Yeah, it's not as good as GoldenEye though, is it? It's better than GoldenEye. What? And it kind of is. Finally, my absolute favourite, treasured PS1 game of all time, and it's Medieval. I play it every single year, without fail, around the Halloween season, because it just gets me in the mood. It is the funniest PlayStation game I've ever played. It's one of the most replayable I've ever played. It is beyond funny, and it actually contains some of the best and worst voice acting I've ever heard in a video game. And I cannot recommend it enough to people who don't know it, but obviously the remaster came out recently, but I still go back and play the original as well, because I guess it just has more nostalgia for me. But play the remake, and please, PlayStation gods, the Sony god people, remake the second one. Yeah? Come on, I'm waiting. OddPod, thank you. I'm off to play some games now, alright?
Hey, what's up guys? It's Woodman FLG here, and right off the bat, I want to thank OddPod for involving me in this. We were talking a little bit about PS1 and our childhood, and I actually got a lot to say about that. My brother actually had his PS1 first, and the only game he had was A racing game, which didn't really interest me that much, but B, Twisted Metal 2. Now, I come from a family that was a little late to let me see the whole blood and guts thing in video games. So one of my first memories with the PlayStation 1 was staying up until everyone went to bed so that I could wake up and play Twisted Metal 2 in the middle of the night. But the real thing that really got me with the PS1 is it really made me realize how much I love RPGs. Like, the amount of absolutely fantastic games on this system, it's just, you could barely even count it. It's you can't argue that it's one of the strongest platforms in RPGs in the entirety of gaming, in all honesty. I grabbed some of my favorite stuff here out of my own personal collection. Saga Frontier 1 and 2. Both games are so good for different reasons. I have a lot of amazing memories with both of them. The remaster for this was really good. Please give us this! I actually played so many RPGs that I even ended up making my own. It wasn't very good, and it's not even in existence anymore. It was like 3 memory cards large. It was ridiculous. But man, what a cool thing. The PlayStation 1, it really was a powerhouse. It really made Nintendo go, whoo! Not the biggest Nintendo 64 guy right here, in all honesty. It's got some good stuff, but if you ask me, you're not going to be able to touch. I mean, Zelda, we got a Lundra. Come on. If you're talking platformers and stuff like that, then I mean, like, we got, I thought I had a Mega Man 8. I guess I don't. Well, Mega Man 8 would be included in this, but X4, 5, 6, amazing games. And if we're talking Mega Man, you can't forget Legends 1, Legends 2, and Tron Bond. Some of my favorite 3D adventure games that I've ever played in my entire life. Brave Fencer Musashi is also included in that. Fantastic games like Castlevania Symphony of the Night as well. This game has influenced so many games from its genre and beyond in the years. You can't argue that. My personal favorite, XenoGears. This game is near and dear to me. I love this game. It's one of the most important gaming experiences I've ever had. And I wouldn't have been able to have that without the PlayStation 1. And then even you had some stuff that had just the most amazing shelf presences. Lunar 1 and 2. Look at these freaking huge working designs. They were more like, you saw them on Sega a lot more, I feel like, but some of these working design things, man, they were absolutely amazing. The PlayStation 1, it was my console of choice in those days. You couldn't get me off of it if you tried. I even listened to music on it. I even listened to music on it. I had that first gen one that had like the trippy visualizer. Yeah, I even had someone request that one in particular when I was working at the game store. So I guess the guy wanted a nice visualizer for some reason or another. But to wrap that up, the PS1 is one of the greatest consoles ever. And for someone who's an RPG fan like me, you're hard to find a console that has as many good games as the PlayStation 1. Again, thank you, Oddpod, for having me on. I had a blast talking about the PlayStation 1 for a little bit. Bye, guys!
Another random memory of the PS1 is I remember my dad coming home from work one day with a big pile of paper, with like lists full of game titles, and he just put it in front of me and said, right, tick off the ones that you want. And I thought he was going to buy me all these games. So I was like, oh yeah, I want Digimon World, I want this one, that one, and there's one called Fighter Maker. I don't remember what the game was like. I think you can make your own fighting game or something. But I remember ticking that, and I just ticked a load of them off. He went, okay, right, I'll sort that out for you. But I remember he said, I need your PS1. So he took the PS1, and I didn't really think about it. I was like, oh, okay, sure. And I'd never heard of chipping before, but he got the PS1 chipped, and he came back with a big pile of discs, and yeah, I'd got a load of new games suddenly. But I didn't really delve into the whole chipping thing that much because I don't know who did it, but half of the games didn't even work. And I remember getting Digimon World was one I was most excited for because, you know, Pokemon, Digimon, all that kind of stuff. And I was so excited for it. I remember playing it for like a few hours, and it kept crashing on a certain bit every single time. I remember getting so frustrated that I ejected it really hard. Sorry, babies. I ejected it really hard, grabbed the disc, and just threw it across the room. I threw it so hard that when it hit the wardrobe, it exploded, and there was just shards of CD going everywhere. I'd never seen a CD explode like that. It was crazy. But and then I just didn't touch another one of the games because they annoyed me so much. So from then on, I was like, I just want proper PlayStation games. I don't want any of these copies. I was sick of it because they kept crashing all the time. So that was my only foray, is that the right word, into like copied, pirated games and stuff from some dodgy guy that my dad worked with.
Hello, I'm Mr. Biffo from Digitizer, and this is Sanya from Digitizer.
Oh, hi.
What are our memories of the PlayStation 1? Sanya, do you have any? I told him you wouldn't have any. I told him. You don't have any, do you? What do you remember of, what was it, 94, 95-ish? Nothing. What do I remember? I remember going to a trade show and seeing a PlayStation at the Sony booth in a glass box. And you couldn't touch it. And it looked very mysterious. Once it came out, I wasn't a massive fan initially. I actually preferred. You're gonna think I'm mad. But I did prefer the Saturn. I didn't enjoy all of the games that were there early on because they were it all seemed a bit more slanted towards the Japanese. And I personally experienced Tomb Raider for the first time on the Saturn. I know that's mad.
How about that?
You must remember Lara Croft.
Yeah, I remember Lara Croft. I remember Tomb Raider. Not playing it, hearing about it.
Have you ever played on a PlayStation?
No, never.
Why did you?
Oh, wait, hang on.
I did say
you had one. Remember, I had a really quick go of a Call of Duty game once.
Wow.
Was that on a PlayStation or the Xbox?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
But yeah.
So yeah, my main memory is the wobbly polygon textures. Not like in the first sort of wave of games for being kind of too Japanese. Not that there's anything wrong with Japanese games, but you know, I felt they were very.
Yeah, what do you mean too Japanese?
The first lineup of games had that Japanese. All of them felt like they kind of had that Japanese quirkiness, and I didn't love Ridge Racer, which
Mr. Biffo didn't love the quirkiness.
Well, okay,
you heard it here first.
It's a long time ago. I don't remember why.
That was before he
went
quirky.
Also, right, as a 90s games journalist, we had a nightmare getting review copies from Sony.
Right, so that skewed your opinion.
To the point that we got a verbal warning when we moaned about their PR man on Digitizer.
Fair enough.
We've been trying for months. We were the only kind of games outlet in the UK who weren't PlayStation games.
So they were actively avoiding
this guy was, yeah.
This guy was this before or after you moaned about him?
Oh no, before.
So he was avoiding you before you moaned about him, and how did it work after you moaned about him?
We started getting them. Yeah.
Did you?
After
moaning sometimes works.
After we complained to our boss. He rang up and went absolutely apeshit because his surname was O'Connell, and we put up a thing complaining. Might have been, I can't remember if it was Fat Sal. Or anyway, it was something on Digitizer complaining, which we ended with the line, "It's bad PR, O'Connell," because it coloured our opinion against the PlayStation. You know,
you associated the PlayStation with him.
Or
him ignoring you.
It wasn't exactly kind of ingratiating us with Sony, who. Yeah, all right, they probably didn't need Digitizer because the PlayStation did just fine anyway. But
Sony's massive.
We were massive. I know this might seem strange to you with our 3,000 odd views per video. But Digitizer was, back in the 90s, enormous. Like, eye-wateringly enormous. So we also could have done quite a lot of damage to both Sony and that PR gentleman's reputation, which he clearly, it's funny, isn't it? When he got called out, it's funny, isn't it? How then he took notice of us. Yeah, the rest of the time, literally would ignore us. We'd email, we would phone, everything, nothing. Not a thing. They never return our calls or anything. So that was my initial impression of the PlayStation. I liked it in the end. Once.
Well, you only use the PlayStation now, don't you? Apart from
yes,
your
well,
Switch.
PS4. It's not. This is about the PlayStation 1.
Oh, are they
the first one.
different?
Well, yeah, it's not the
I
same
thought
one
it was
that
just
came
the
out
fourth
like.
version of a PlayStation.
Yeah, but it's technically a different machine.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh. I thought it was like the same kind of machine but upgraded.
It's embarrassing, isn't it?
It's really embarrassing.
We're gonna
It's
go
okay,
now.
you can all just
We're gonna
correct
go.
me.
Just go. Just
Right,
go.
right.
Just get out of this.
Hey everyone, Jazzy Jeff here from the Jazzy J714 YouTube channel. I just want to first start out by saying thank you so much to Dan of OddPod for letting me participate in this video about the legendary PlayStation 1. So, my thoughts with the system were, it was just groundbreaking for me at the time because the Sony PlayStation 1 was actually the very first system that I got from my parents, brand new, Christmas Day, of course, so it was like a system that I'll always associate with the holidays. And, you know, for the time, it did so much. It played CDs, which was incredible. You know, sure, you know, the later systems play Blu-rays and you can stream and everything, but at that time, it was a huge deal to be able to have your video games and CDs and all that good stuff all together on one little unit that you could play directly through your TV, whether you're hanging out in your bedroom or chilling at a friend's house. It was just this neat machine that did all this stuff. And then I slowly started to see arcade games get ported to the PlayStation 1 that looked so much better than the earlier arcade ports that were done on the other cartridge systems. And Area 51 was a fun one, and there was a ton of other great ones that I'm like completely forgetting about right now. But you know, honestly though, the games that will always stick out are the same ones that stick out for everybody. Stuff like Resident Evil, you know, the second Resident Evil, the Oddworld games. I always had a lot of fun with the Street Fighter Alpha games, even though I sucked at it. All of the racing games, the test drive games, they were decent, they were fun. You know, my sister and I, we got the wheel with the pedal and everything, so that once again felt like the arcade action at home. I'm drawing a blank. I mean, Crash Bandicoot was huge. I played all of those games. Crash Bash is a great party game. You know, the Army Men games I played the hell out of those games. But for me, it was just, you know, getting that new system and the analog controllers, and they vibrated, which was huge at the time. It was so many new groundbreaking things that we all just sort of take for granted nowadays with the newer systems. And back then, you know, analog control was a big deal. You know, extra buttons. Now you have R1. Now you have the L1. You know, all these additional components to the games, all these new plugins and stuff. It just made for a really exciting, you know, time to be alive, you know, to be young and to be able to get the stuff brand new. And the look of the system was iconic, and the feel of the system was iconic, and it was a good system. It was strong. It lasted. I remember my, you know, Nintendo's breaking and Sega Genesis breaking and having issues, you know, even back in the mid 90s. But my PlayStation 1 lasted forever. It did eventually die a couple years ago. The laser on it went, but you know, it was a solid system, and it had a lot of great connectors in the back. The earlier models did, to help with audio, to improve with picture and stuff like that. And these are just all things that come standard now. But Sony really kicked ass with that first system, and obviously all of their other systems. You know, the second PlayStation 2 was tremendous and going forward, but there was something very unique and very special about that first PlayStation 1 that I will never forget.
So a few of the games that I played a lot back in the day. I've got a few of them here. As I've mentioned a few times now, I was stupidly into Pokemon. So we've got Monster Rancher, already mentioned that one. Then we've got Digimon World. Digimon World, I did get, this is the very copy I got, because after I told my mum that burnt copy that I got, that one that exploded on the wardrobe didn't work. I eventually got my own copy of Digimon World. And these both are the very copies I had back in the day as a kid. And they are a bit worse for wear now. And then another one, very Pokemon-like, is a game called Jade Cocoon. And that's one where you catch... I think... I haven't played it for a few years, but I've been playing it a lot. But you catch monsters with, like, playing a flute or something. And you catch the monsters like that. And then you can fuse the monsters together to make stronger monsters. I do need to go back into it sometime. I've got the second one on PS2 as well. So Jade Cocoon's really good. I'm just looking over to my PlayStation collection there. Another one is another memory. Forbidden Memories, Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories. And that's another Christmassy story where I really wanted the game. I was proper into Yu-Gi-Oh! And I saw the game on shelf in Woolworths. And I told my mum I really want that game. So she said, okay, I'll get it for Christmas. So she took it off the shelf and bought it and said, you can't have it till Christmas. So this was like, I think it was the beginning of December. So I was like, okay, it's not too much of a wait. But then I kept thinking about it. Like, really want to play it right now. All the games I've got now, I don't want to play. I want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories. So I remember before my mum wrapped it, I went upstairs when she was out, took the CD out of the case, and then put another random PlayStation game that I'd already played in it, and closed it, went back down, and the whole of December I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories, and I was having a great time. And mum didn't have a clue. So on Christmas Day, I opened my game. I thought, oh, thanks, Yu-Gi-Oh! Yay! But I'd been playing it the whole December. I did that. I only did that a few times in my childhood, but yeah, I really wanted to play it.
Hey everyone, it's Joe Grotesque here. Dan asked me to share my PlayStation 1 memories with you guys, so I figured I would. So let's go back to how I acquired my PlayStation 1. I believe I was a sophomore in high school at the time. And it didn't look like I was going to be getting a PlayStation for a birthday or as a Christmas gift or anything of that nature. So I had to come up with the funds myself. I had a group of friends that were also really into video games. And one of them was really interested in owning my Super NES. So I sold him the Super NES along with about 16 games to get the funds for my PlayStation 1. That aside, I thought I'd share with you some of my favorite PlayStation 1 titles. Now, I spent a lot of time on this game, and if you're into claymation and stop-motion animation and things of that nature, and if you're a Earthworm Jim fan, you may really enjoy Skull Monkeys. It's created by the same people. Up next is a game I played a ton with my cousin, and it was my first experience playing a game where you just straight up go around stealthily assassinating people as a ninja. And that's Tenchu Stealth Assassins, a really cool game which has several sequels. And last but not least, who didn't like cool vampiric style games? And I don't think games like God of War and stuff like that would have existed without this game. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. It's by far the coolest game in the Legacy of Kain series, if you ask me, but that's only my opinion. So that's it for my PlayStation 1 memories. I hope you enjoyed it.
Hey guys, Murray here, talking about PS1 nostalgia. And my favourite game of all time on PS1 is Jackie Chan's Stuntmaster. And we don't have it in the collection here because Dan thinks it's too expensive. But I'll get it one day, I'm sure. But yeah, Jackie Chan Stuntmaster. Greatest game ever made. And yeah, that's all I can say about it. Jackie Chan Stuntmaster. Play it!
So another game I wanted to mention was Tekken 3. Now, I'm not the biggest fighting game fan in the world, but I do play them every so often. But Tekken 3 is just my favourite of all time for one particular reason. And that's the cinematics. So when you use, I think it's the arcade mode, when you use each character, at the end of the game, you get a little cinematic of that character. So one of my favourites was Gon, the little dinosaur. His was a really fun one. I think his name is Mokujin. It's one of my favourite Tekken characters. I think it's Mokujin. I think let's not get it wrong. But the wood character, it's like a wood person. His one was my favourite because I haven't seen these cinematics for ages. But because I used to play it over and over just to watch the cinematics and stuff. And I'm pretty sure he was playing like an arcade game and having loads of fun. And his wife taps him on the shoulder and then punches him out or something like that. But it was I remember it being really fun. And yeah, they were just really interesting, really fun. I just liked that, unlocking these little fun little animations. Kuma was another one. I think he was waiting for a bear and they put out some flowers and waited for ages because the bear just walked past him and stuff. They were really fun. And I wish more fighting games would have the... I'm pretty sure a few of them do, but I wish more fighting games would have these little cinematics, like really fun ones. Like just the developer having a bit of fun with the characters and stuff. Because it was really good.
Thank you, Dan, for having me on your channel. And yeah, I'm Martin from Martin's Games, and I'm going to talk about PS1 memories. So I remember my dad having a PS1 when I was a kid, so I didn't officially own it myself. But the first game I remember playing on that was, I think, PGA Tour or FIFA, I don't know, 98, 99, something like that, because it's my dad's console and he likes sports games. But the main game I enjoyed to play was Crash Bandicoot 2. Now, I didn't actually own this game back then. My friend had it and he wanted to play PGA Golf, so I remember swapping PGA Golf for Crash 2 just for a little time, just to play for a little bit. But I didn't tell my dad and he got slightly angry with me because I swapped it for this. But then actually I think he enjoyed playing this more than PGA, because this is one of the best games ever made. See, that made me fall in love with Crash Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot is still my favourite Crash Bandicoot game ever made. Now, I remember playing around my friend's house. He used to babysit me. Well, not him, his mum babysit me. And he had Crash Bandicoot 1, which I remember playing. I remember not liking as much, and I still don't like as much as Crash Bandicoot 2. But he also remember had Tomb Raider, which was the first game I was ever scared of. I remember being in a tomb and just hearing this roar like a T-Rex or Velociraptor. I think it was a T-Rex. And I just remember being scared. I didn't want to play that game at all. And speaking of my friend, he also had Gex. I love this game. I remember having a demo, and the funny thing about this game was, I remember playing it and I got stuck in a level, had no idea where to go or what to do. We're at my friend's house and he was like, oh, you just turn the brightness up your TV. My TV was too dark for me to see the level and where to go, and after discovering actually turn the brightness up on TVs, I found out where to go. So yeah, that was a cool memory from Gex Deep Cover Gecko for the PS1. Another fun memory of a game is Croc. I remember this being in one of them like PlayStation play booths at a Charlie Chalk's restaurant that my mum worked at. I remember going there for to see her at work, and I remember playing hours on this game. That's the main memory I have of Croc. It's not a great game anymore. The controls are really weird. Still a fun, colourful game, and I think this is meant to be a Yoshi game. Back in the day, I think whoever developed it, I'm not sure who it is now, actually suggested to Nintendo to make a Yoshi game, and they said no, and went to PlayStation to make Croc. So yeah, cool little fact there. And later on, as I still loved PlayStation, I remember playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, because back then I was back in skateboarding like I am now, and this was such a good game. I remember customising my character, not for me, for one of my friends who used to skateboard who was a lot better than this. And yeah, I made him on this game and played as him through the career, which is pretty cool. Also, the soundtrack is pretty good. And in my opinion, one of the best Star Wars games on PlayStation, Jedi Power Battles. I love this game. I remember the trailer where the controller? The lightsaber flipped and caught it and slashed up some droids. I remember rumours that you can actually do that in game. I don't know why you want to do that in game. It's just a weird thing. But this game is great and it's really hard. It's only like 10 levels, but they're long levels and that's hard levels. Also, you can think unlock like Darth Maul and stuff by finishing the game with certain characters. I've never done that. I one day I do want to get back and do that. So yeah, as a kid I had PlayStation quite a lot, but I remember actually swapping my PS1 for N64 quite a few times. I never had both consoles at once. I think I did once. But most of the times I got bored of the PlayStation games, I swapped it for N64, got back Mario Kart, Super Mario, and then I thought, oh, I'll play some PlayStation games like Crash, and I then swapped N64. Like Game Station, you can obviously trade in and get a new console, which I kept doing back and forth for the PS1 and the N64, until I had both consoles, and ever since then, I've basically stuck with PlayStation. I have PS2, PS3, PS4, and now have PS5. So PlayStation is a big part of as me growing up, and I'm now a PlayStation fan as well as a Nintendo fan, as you can see, but PlayStation is probably just slightly better than Nintendo for me. So yeah, there's some cool PlayStation memories from me. Again, thank you, Dan, for having me on your channel.
So perspective is a weird thing, and that especially applies to the PlayStation 1. Lots of people have amazing memories of fantastic graphics and how incredible it was compared to previous consoles, but I didn't have any of that. I think that's mainly because I owned a PC at the time. So when the PlayStation came out with its low resolution 3D graphics, I was like, what is that? That's hardly cutting edge, is it? The PC can do 10 times better what that can. Like, Doom arrived on the PlayStation, and I was like, well, that came out years ago for the PC. And it just didn't seem very impressive, but that was because I was looking at it from a PC owner's perspective. It wasn't until I went round my mate's house and he had his PlayStation 1 set up with Gran Turismo, and I ended up playing that all night, and I was like, well, this is actually pretty good fun. And despite the graphics not being, highest resolution and having warping textures all over the shop, it was a good console. And it's at that moment where I realised that in terms of consoles, it was a massive progression over the 16-bit consoles, the Mega CD, the Atari Jaguar. It was a huge step forward. So my memories aren't very complimentary for the PlayStation, but that's my own fault. It was very much a cutting-edge console in terms of consoles, and for that it should be commended. Yes. Hail the PlayStation! And the Atari Jaguar.
So one of my other favourite things ever was demo discs. I've got a bunch here. This is my favourite demo disc of all time. It's not because of Metal Gear Solid, it's because of the Net Yarosi compilation on it. It's so good. I used to play this over and over again for this, the Net Yarosi compilation. I just got a bunch of other random demo discs. I had so many. It's because of my uncle. He collected PlayStation magazine, and he would just, when he's messed around with the demo disc, he would borrow it to, not borrow, he'd give me the demos, and I'd have a big pile of them. And yeah, the Net Yarosi one is the one that's always stuck with me just because I played it so much. Now, another one of my favourite games of all time is one I don't actually have in my collection, unfortunately, and that is Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. I do need to get it into my collection again, but sorry, I'm distracted. But yeah, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. I do remember the day I got it. I was at my grandparents' house, and they bought it me. I'd always, because I stay at my grandparents a lot, so I'd take my PlayStation there and play that for hours. But I remember all day I was playing Crash Bandicoot, and I'd already played the first one. And it's weird. I always thought the first one was fine. I thought it was quite difficult for me, but I always thought it was a bit of fun. But 3, because I never played 2 back in the day, but 3, it was just so much fun that you got 1 minute you're on a motorbike and then you're riding on a tiger, and just it was just so much fun. So yeah, 3 Warped is like one of my favourite games on PS1.
Hi, I'm Big Cal, and I'm here today to talk about the Sony PlayStation 1. A fantastic console, one of my personal favourites, maybe even my all-time favourite. Growing up, I had to share consoles with my brother. We started off with the NES, then the SNES, but then when it got to the next generation, we were a bit older and able to have consoles of our own. My brother went with the N64, me, I went with the Sony PlayStation. This is still my original console from back in the day, and is the oldest console that I still own, as we got rid of the NES and SNES in order to sell on and buy the new systems. So this one's still with me, still in perfect working order because I recently replaced the laser in there, so it is fantastic. And it may also be chipped to play copied games. Whoops. Yeah, so the Sony PlayStation, amazing console. And yeah, so many fantastic games for it. Starting with Twisted Metal 2 World Tour, the first PlayStation game I ever played. Came bundled in the system with 3 other games. But yeah, this one's the first I played. Vehicular combat game, and still in my opinion the peak of Twisted Metal games. Then we have weird 3D platformers, such as Rugrats, Search for Reptar. Yeah, based on a kids' TV show, one of my favourite TV shows growing up. 3D platformer. It's just such a well done game. It doesn't particularly control the best, but neither does it look the best. But you can tell what everything is All the levels are based on actual episodes of the show, and it's just really, really well done. So don't let the dodgy graphics put you off. Really fantastic game. And speaking of fantastic games and 3D platformers, Toy Story 2. Yeah, so movie license, TV license games, things typically not very good. We got the Rugrats, which was fun. This one is genuinely, genuinely good. 3D collectathon platformer, levels based on locations from the film, as well as some new ones, collecting Pizza Planet tokens, or Planet Pizza tokens, whatever it's called. And yeah, you're just going on your way through the event of the film, and it is absolutely fantastic with a killer soundtrack as well. Wouldn't be me without showing off a wrestling game, and we have WWF SmackDown 2. The peak of wrestling games on the PlayStation 1, at least as far as the ones we got released here in England. There may be some Japanese ones that are slightly better, but yeah, SmackDown 2, absolutely phenomenal. Built on the first game, everything's better, faster, more match types, bigger roster, massive story mode. Excellent game. I've spent far too long of my life playing this. Still play it today, still really fun. And lastly, just to wrap this up, a cool as hell game, Dino Crisis. Basically, Resident Evil, but with dinosaurs. Awesome, awesome game. Love this growing up. I actually played through and completed the Japanese version growing up because I love the look of the game. I was able to get that on copy before it came out over here. And yeah, had to figure out what to do in the menus, but other than that, the voice acting and everything, the story was all in English, so yeah, it was a really fun game to play through. Absolutely fantastic. The fact Capcom haven't remastered it yet is disgusting. So that is the Sony PlayStation 1, my favourite childhood console, perhaps my favourite console of all time. Absolutely amazing. Tons and tons of fantastic games. My collection is around 170 now, and I'm still finding more great games for the system. So, hope you enjoyed that little look at the PlayStation 1.
Hey guys, Metropolis here, and thank you to Dan for inviting me onto OddPod today to share with you my PlayStation 1 memories, and a big shout out to Murray as well. So, why did I buy a PlayStation 1? Well, it's actually because of one game, a game that everyone knows quite well called Final Fantasy VII. Now, originally, I used to be a PC gamer before going on to PlayStation, and I had Final Fantasy VII for the PC. But because my computer wasn't that good, and I was rubbish being a kid, knowing what specifications from what games would actually work on my Windows 95 computer, not everything ran smoothly. Final Fantasy VII installed fine, and it would get to the intro, it'd show the stars swirling around in the sky, and then it would freeze. The game would be gone. So I went to my dad and I said, "Oh, Dad, so please have a PlayStation. There's this game on there I really would like, and I don't have to install anything. You just put a disc in, power on, and you'll go. It's fine, it's great." He didn't seem so keen in that split moment, but then he said like 10 seconds later, "Oh, okay, I'll buy you a PlayStation." And I've never looked back. So I got Final Fantasy VII then for the PlayStation, loved it. So it's what started my love then for RPGs, especially JRPGs, awesome stuff. But then also games like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Croc, Metal Gear Solid, Dino Crisis, Resident Evil, so many good ones. And I've recently started picking up again for the PlayStation. Like I said, Metal Gear Solid. That's the one I had, or not I had, my friends had this, and I'd always borrow it off them. I could never finish it. I always got to the last boss, so I decided I need to pick this up, play it again, and finish it off. But then also games like this gem right here, Discworld, point-and-click adventure games. So many classics on the PlayStation, guys, and as you're watching this right now, I highly recommend give it a go. Go on eBay, see these things, talk to people in the community. There's some classics I missed as a kid because I couldn't buy them all because I was in school, I didn't have a job, didn't have all the money, but now I can. So yeah, PlayStation 1, it started my love then for PlayStation guy through and through, and I recently had a PlayStation 5 this year, so it'll always be a top console that started off a lot of gaming journeys and memories for me way back when. Okay, thank you.
So yeah, with me, with the PS1, because I've got a feeling a lot of people's memories will be stuff like Metal Gear Solid and Tomb Raider and, just the big ones and stuff, the really big PS1 games. The games where when people say PS1, that's the games they think of. And it's not like the case with me that much. Like, I'd never played Metal Gear. I played the demo a lot on repeat, and I really enjoyed it, but I never played the full game. And yeah, Crash Bandicoot's probably the only one of the big ones I played. But other than that, like Tomb Raider, my friends were playing it, and Tomb Raider seemed fun, but I'd never got it. I was never really that interested in getting it, so never played Tomb Raider. Trying to think of the other big ones, but yeah, Spyro. Never played Spyro back in the day either, except for like a little bit at a friend's house. Again, it was another one I just wasn't that interested in. I was very much into my RPGs, but again, Final Fantasy, I didn't play that until a few years later. Distracted by zombies. But yeah, a few years later, that's when I played Final Fantasy VII stuff. But my friend Steve, you'll see in this video, he's the one that played Final Fantasy a lot and Metal Gear and all that. So when I that's why I saw those games, because I was watching him play like Final Fantasy. I'm pretty sure I saw him play 8 quite a bit. It might be 9, but I can't remember. But yeah, he was the Final Fantasy one that I'd watch him play games. With me, it was stuff like Monster Rancher and anything with training monsters and stuff, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Just the weird games, basically. Oh, I say weird games, but you know what I mean. The ones that were the big PS1 games. They're the ones I was really into for some reason. And yeah, I don't have a lot of memories of playing the big PlayStation hitters. Except for one actually. I've just remembered one that's just popped in my mind right now, and that is Destruction Derby. Destruction Derby is one I played a lot because for the fact that you can, when you're playing the game, you can take the CD out and you can put your own audio CD in it. So I used to play the Space Jam album a lot in Destruction Derby. So yeah, take the game out, put Space Jam in, and then just crash some cars while listening to Space Jam. So that was always a really fun thing. But yeah, but I just loved the PlayStation so much because there were so many games for it. Like every time I went to find some games for it, there was always something weird and different that I'd never seen before. Like there's one I've got in my collection called Pet in TV. It's like a Tamagotchi kind of thing. And again, just a weird random one. But yeah, Pet in TV was oh my god. But yeah, Pet in TV was a really good one. Again, like Jade Cocoon, Heart of Darkness was a really fun one. Yeah, Digimon World. They're the ones I remember the most. And I remember renting, I've got it up there and you saw it before here, it's the Rugrats Search for Reptar. I did play that a little bit. Just looking through the... Oh, there it is. But yeah, South Park, the game I played. For these ones I rented. I even... Here's a memory. The first game I ever rented was Spice Girls for PS1. Don't know why. It was just a random thing, and it wasn't because of that cheat where you can see them naked, because I didn't know about that until after I'd rented it. And you can't see them naked; they're behind chairs or something. I've only seen a picture of it. I've not done the cheat. I don't even have the game actually, do I? No, I don't. But here's the Pac-Man clone thing, and this has some great music in it, but you can't hear it right now. But yes, so it was just the odd stuff that always captured me with PS1 like this. I just loved it, and I'd just go to other friends' houses to watch them play like Tomb Raider and stuff like that.
I'm here today to talk about my PlayStation 1 memories. Now, before I start, I just want to say a massive thank you to Dan for allowing me on the show today. So, the PlayStation we had in my house back in the day actually wasn't mine. It was my brother's, as I was the N64 kid and he was the PlayStation 1 kid. But we would play each other's consoles from time to time, and one of the main games we would play together on his PlayStation was Tekken 2. Such an amazing fighting game that I still enjoy to this day. The opening scenes in that are burnt into my retinas. So many iconic characters, so many close fights were held in this game, but really great memories from playing that back in the day. Another one I remember playing so much, but unfortunately I don't have a copy on the PlayStation 1, is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. I actually have the Dreamcast versions. When I got my Dreamcast, I knew I had to have Tony Hawk's for it. So many great memories playing that game, an iconic soundtrack, and wonderful to see that we got a remaster of it as I get to enjoy it all over again. But to be honest with you, most of my PlayStation memories come from high school, as my friend at the time, he loved his PlayStation. Every time I would go to his house on the weekends, he'd be playing whatever PlayStation game he had his hands on at the time. And one I remember very, very fondly is Tenchu Stealth Assassins. Such a mind-blowing game for me at the time. The fact you had to sneak around, not get seen, because to be honest with you, I'd never really experienced a stealth game until I saw this for the first time. I really wanted this on my N64 and my Dreamcast, but of course, PlayStation exclusive, so I could not get hold of this. But another game I have such fond memories of from my high school days is WWF SmackDown. Now, my friend at the time, he was not into wrestling in any way, shape or form, but I was a huge wrestling fan. And when I borrowed this from a friend at the time, I just knew we had to play it together. I was like, come on, let's play it. And he was like, no, it's wrestling. I was like, come on, you got to try it. And he tried it and he absolutely loved it. Mainly because you could fight anywhere you wanted. You could fight in the hallway, you could fight at the top of the ramp, you could go into the kitchen of all places, you could go into the parking lot. It was absolutely insane, but such a fun game. And to be honest with you, if you were an N64 kid and you had no mercy, when this came about, you wanted this too, as it used all the same engine. So that's about it, guys. That is my PlayStation 1 memories. A bit of a varied bucket of stuff there for you, but it's all good fun. Such a great console and so many fantastic memories. Thank you once again for having me, Dan, and I'll see you all soon.
Hi Dan and all the Odd Pod crew, it's Sorax from Sorax Space here. Now you may think I'm a real Sega nut and wouldn't really be into the PlayStation, especially given my content and all the stuff in the background and sort of focus on Mega Drive, which was my very first console. But my second ever home console was the Sony PlayStation, and what a console it was. But why did I really want to get it? Well, my friend had one, and he had great games like Hercules, what a great game, another Disney game, Tarzan, really good Disney games, and also Toy Story 2 was a really good one, which I've got as well. But what was the game that made me really want to get a PlayStation? I kid you not, Bubsy 3D. Now, before you turn off, I'm not joking. This is actually why I wanted to get a PlayStation. He had it, and when I walked in the room, he was a next door neighbour that I used to visit often when I was in primary school. And he had it set up, the PlayStation. It was the first time I saw one in the flesh, as it were. And it was Bubsy 3D it was playing. And of course, where I had the Mega Drive previously, the leap up to the PlayStation in graphics was amazing. And Bubsy was Bubsy 3D, it's an open 3D world and no sort of graphics I hadn't seen before. And maybe if I'd stayed longer than a few minutes, I would have realised that it wasn't a very good game at all, to say the least. But the graphics just blew my mind, so I had to get one. But it took me a very long while to get one. I actually got the PS1, the smaller version. And the very first games I had for it were Buster Move 4, the stickers aren't mine, but nothing wrong with them stickers, but they're not mine. The Rayman, classic Rayman, and the brilliant Rugrats Search for Reptar. Now before you laugh, this is actually a very good game if you haven't played it. I had a mate round and we actually completed this quite recently, maybe a year or so ago, because we're adults and that's my idea of a good night apparently. And as we're quickly just racing through memories, I've got some games here, some of my favourites. Digimon World and Digimon World 2003. If you haven't played these already, definitely give them a go. They're some of my favourite games of all time, these two. And I'm a massive Pokemon fan as well, so it might be a bit blasphemous, but these are brilliant RPGs. Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. This was my very first Crash Bandicoot game and I've been a big lover of Crash Bandicoot since. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Seen better days, but this is again one of the best games on the PlayStation. So glad I bought this. Great memories from this one, especially Hagrid's face. My first wrestling game very early on when I got a PlayStation was WWF Warzone with Steve Austin on the front. That was a great game, but you're not going to beat WWF SmackDown. This is like one of the best wrestling games ever made in my opinion. My main memory from this is doing the People's Elbow with The Rock like every 2 minutes, because that's just what I did. Driver I had, great memories of Driver, mainly in the parking lot, but once I got out of it, it improved. Yeah, I was a stupid kid back then. I probably still can't do it now because I'm a stupid adult as well. Yu-Gi-Oh! Spent many hours on this one, playing with my friends as well, but mainly the solo campaign, and we used to play the with the cards as well. I've still got my deck somewhere, maybe that's a video for another time. This one, we won't talk about this one. Find out why by looking at my video on Cyberdeck. Resident Evil 3, Nemesis, with obviously Nemesis. This is my very first Resident Evil, and that's what got me into the series. Cool Borders! You legally have to say that when you hold this game up. My friend had this, and then I bought it subsequently for the collection, for the memories. And this is back when friends actually went to each other's houses, and actually saw each other and played games together in the same room. Great memories. And I can't do a video on the PlayStation without talking about Final Fantasy VII. Didn't actually play this until maybe about 5 years or so ago. So not one of my early memories, but I had to play it. It's one of those games that you got to sort of play on the bucket list. And I'm so glad I did, completed it all. Just what a fantastic game, and just showcases what brilliant games the PlayStation 1 had. And who remembers memory cards? I've dug these out from a closet somewhere. This is the PlayStation 1 memory cards I have left. And this one, which had 4 in it, and when you plugged it in, the red light came on, you could select which memory card you wanted. Mind blown at the time, but kids nowadays, they won't believe that we had to start with this. Thanks to OddPod for allowing me to waffle on this long about the PlayStation 1, digging those games out, brought a lot of good memories, and I'm looking forward to hearing the memories of everyone else.
Hey everyone, Steve here. So I'm doing my little bit on PS1. Absolutely love the PlayStation 1. It's what made me fall in love with the PlayStation brand. I think pretty much everyone can say that. Obviously, just so many memories, so many great franchises such as Metal Gear, Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, Tekken. Too many to mention, but I also have my favourites that probably weren't as popular, such as The Phantom Menace, Jedi Power Battles. Also, Driver 2, which for me at the time was pretty much the GTA of that generation, before GTA 3 obviously came and changed everything. But yeah, PlayStation has always been very special to me. Absolutely love it. And it's amazing how long it's been with us. It's just feel like it's been around forever. I mean, I was always quite late to generations, and I was quite late to the PS1 generation when everyone had, a Nintendo. I had an Atari 2600 sort of thing. And when everyone had a Super Nintendo, I had a Nintendo. When everyone had a PlayStation, I was really sort of only on Super Nintendo, and it wasn't until about 98, 99 that I got a PS1. And I remember before that though, there was a magazine series of football soccer skills or whatever, and they came with these videos, and there was a competition to win a PS1, and I was going to my nana's one weekend. I'd entered the competition, and I was going to my nana's one weekend, and the Friday, that morning, a big box had arrived, and I was convinced, absolutely convinced it was a PS1. It wasn't, it was just some folders for the magazine to go in. But yeah, I love my PS1. It was probably one of my favourite. I mean, obviously, the other PlayStations have surpassed it, but at the time, it was like no other. I mean, like I said, I discovered Final Fantasy on there, the Metal Gear Solid series. So many good things on there. I could never play Resident Evil though. Absolutely scared the life out of me. I could never play that game. But yeah, just an absolute brilliant console.
Hey everybody! My name is Arb the Puppet, and I'm from the TechWizX channel. Thank you, Dan from OddPod, for inviting me to your collab. My favorite PlayStation 1 game has to be Pepsi Man. What's there not to love about Pepsi Man? He's a superhero who sells you Pepsi. I just love Pepsi. Morning, noon, and night. Though I can't drink it, it gives me gas. But I love playing the game, as well collecting the toys that came out in Japan back in the early days. Thanks again, Dan, for inviting me to your collab. That's all for now. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Another one, again, they keep coming back to me, but another game I do remember playing, and I guess it is one of the more popular ones, I think, and that's Gex 3D Enter the Gecko. And I played that one quite a bit. My sister really used to like playing that one as well. So yeah, Gex 3D Enter the Gecko was one. And the reason I like that one is because it was quite toony, I guess, because I was into my cartoons, and it had a bit of a toony feel to it. So I really liked it because of that. But yeah, I'm sure there's so many more memories that I just haven't come to my mind right now. But that's why it's a good idea that I've got a bunch of great friends to to be in this video with, to give some more memories of the PS1.
Sony PlayStation. I was in school when it came out, and for the first sort of 6 months, nobody had one. And we all had to act this sort of mass pretense that it's because the PlayStation was no big deal. Yeah, we were smart kids. We were over the PlayStation before it had even begun, and you knew it was false. You knew from the start it was false. You saw this sort of arcade-perfect Ridge Racer. You saw videos of Wipeout and things like that. You kind of played them occasionally. Like someone would bring in a really cool event. You go to an event and they're like, we got PlayStations there. And you knew this was an amazing console. Like, this was 3D entering the home. It was something serious. But hey, we were over it. Nobody had one because it was rubbish. And then, of course, the cool kids did start getting them. And of course, that was suddenly, yes, the PlayStation really was a big thing. Eventually, my dad got one. And this is the thing. So the PlayStation for me was always, it was the weekends when I was at my dad's when I'd play it. My stepsister at the time was one incredible backseat gamer. So gaming on the PlayStation at my dad's would have a soundtrack, something like this, which is, go on, overtake him, get round the bend, go quicker, accelerate, Ugh! You made me crash, I was trying to concentrate, followed by the sound of step-siblings squabbling and fighting. Anyway, there was this one point, which was Sundays, where my dad had this kind of weird living arrangement. He had this converted flat in a shop and then a flat above it, a little studio flat. And the PlayStation was in the flat above, and the bedrooms were in the flat below. So when I was over there at weekends, we had to be let up in the morning, because they were separate buildings, to play the PlayStation. And there were these 2 hours on Sunday mornings. I'm not sure. I think my stepsister went off and did some sort of dance lesson or something. And I had the PlayStation to myself. My time with this thing. And I think the amount of TOCA touring cars that I must have played during that time. And yet not any of that point was I good enough at TOCA to unlock any of the tracks or any of the cars. So we made this decision to phone the Codemasters hint line. God forbid how much that must have cost. Sort of 90s chat lines. And the only problem with that was the guy online had this really strong accent. And I was struggling to write down all these cheat codes for TOCA, and we got most of them. Except for this one cheat code, which was, I heard as whammo and typed it in and nothing happened. I spent, every weekend, I think the first half hour of my PlayStation time would be trying to figure out this one TOCA cheat code. I think eventually I found it in a magazine or found it on the internet years later, like, oh, JH Ammo. Why didn't the guy just say that?
Hi there, I'm Tamara from the Tamaracade YouTube channel, and I'm here today to talk about the Sony PlayStation 1. Huge thank you to Oddpod for having me on this amazing channel. So, this is how I got a console as a kid. Well, not just any console, the PS1. So, my brother is a fan of the Leicester City Football Club, and he used to go to family night football, so where you'd have the reserve teams playing off each other to have a more sort of relaxed atmosphere than what the main games would have. And he had a programme from that one time, and inside was a competition to win a Sony PlayStation 1. What it was, there was a drawing of a football game, and you had to pick where the ball was, and whoever got the closest won the prize. He didn't win the main prize, but he did win a runner-up prize, which consisted of a copy of Actua Soccer 2 and a year's subscription of official PlayStation magazine. That was amazing! So we got a big stack of demo discs as well, and a full game, and a big stack of magazines, so we could read about all the amazing games coming out on the PS1 that we want to get. The only problem was, we didn't actually have a PlayStation until that Christmas. So me and my brothers, we were like, oh, Mum, let's get a PlayStation, come on. Can we get one? Look, we've got a game and we've got magazines and demos, come on. So then that year, she got us a PlayStation 1. It was all of our presents put together, me and my 2 brothers. And on that Christmas, we had an amazing PlayStation 1. Oh, what a console. Such great memories of playing it. And all those amazing games. The first game that I bought myself was shortly after that Christmas, only a few days really, when the shops would open again. I got my Christmas money and I went into town to get a game. And what game did I get? I got this here, Spyro the Dragon, and this is that exact copy. As you can see, the case is a little worse for wear, it's broken. That happened a lot with these European PS1 games, and especially I was a rather heavy-handed child. Yeah, I'm surprised it's lasted into this shape as much as it did, especially as this is one of my favourite games and I used to play it a lot. I completed it 100% as a kid and I loved every minute of it. An absolute blast of a game, and one I'd highly recommend if you've not played it already. There's also the Reignited trilogy on modern platforms if you want to give that version a go instead. So yeah, absolutely love it. Oh, look, a little thing here for Crash Bandicoot Warped. Advert. Yeah, there was also a demo for that on the disc. So yeah, I got to play some Crash Bandicoot as well as my Spyro. And yeah, the disc still works even though the case is battered. And the manual's in pretty good shape, to be honest. I mean, I think that's because as a kid I didn't really care about manuals. I was like, who needs to read how to play a game? I can just figure it out. I'll be fine. So again, thank you for watching and thank you to Oddpod for having me.
So, I had originally asked for a Sega Saturn for Christmas. I mean, can you blame me? Virtua Racing, Virtua Fighter, Virtua everything else under the sun. It looked like it was going to be the console for me. But my parents, lucky enough, saw sense and bought a PlayStation 1. First games I got for it weren't all that memorable. In fact, the only one I can remember is Tunnel B1. If you've never heard of it, it's for good reason. It's a rather difficult first-person driving, shooting sim thing in dark, dank tunnels, black, grey, grimy. Not all that visually interesting. But as luck would have it, the 3D revolution was upon us. I remember the whole family enjoying dozens upon dozens of games, not just the 3D ones as well either, let's be honest. Klonoa was an amazing game with that slight hint of 3D that just made enough use of the PlayStation to make it far superior than anything that had come before. But then you had the full 3D driving games like Ridge Racer Revolution, Toka Touring Car and Colin McRae Rally, spending forever driving around circuits and getting into a little bit of a demolition derby. Another great game for the PS1, by the way. And seeing what the damage could be done. Full 3D realised damage. Never been done before. Absolutely incredible. And then you've got the fighting games like Tekken, and you've got Soul Calibur finally hitting the PlayStation as well. And how could I leave out the immortal Tomb Raider series? Truly one of the biggest leaps in video gaming that took them from being standard one-note genres to being fully fleshed out action-adventure games, bending, puzzling elements, platforming, all sorts of things into one amazing, mind-blowing 3D experience. Truly the PlayStation was it was a console of its generation. It wasn't perfect. I'd like to think that when they got round to the PS2 they improved a lot of things. But by God, that was one hell of a console.
The other thing with the PS1 was it had this kind of renaissance late in life, because the PS2 had backward compatibility, and suddenly there were all of these PlayStations around that were no longer needed. You can play the games on your PS2. So younger siblings and others just had this sort of avalanche of PlayStations cast upon them. I had 2 at one point, and I don't even remember asking for them. They just ended up in my possession. And this being sort of circa 2001, they ended up in student households. And I just remember the PS1's second lease of life as a student console. particularly in halls of residence. We had the usual sort of hall of residence, 16 people crammed into the same space. One guy had a PS1, and we used to sit there playing international track and field. And there's a technique that we used with international track and field, which we eventually, we called it the polishing technique. And it's you get your jumper and you put the controller underneath it, and you start going like that. And we used to think, what does this look like from the outside of our halls of residence? You know, we were students, we didn't do things like draw curtains. So anybody walking past on the path outside would have looked into that bedroom and they would have just seen 4 blokes intently staring at a little CRT TV, all of them going like that. That's a great PS1 story, isn't it?
I got the Sony PlayStation probably in the autumn of 1998, maybe the late summer. I just finished university and working as a temp for the council, and the tax rate people, Mr. Taxman, was taking a big chunk of my salary. So I got that sorted out and he gave me a lovely tax rebate for 150 quid. So what did I do with that? Obviously spend it on a brand new PlayStation. Marvellous thing. First computer I bought with my own money. It came with obviously the demo disc. Disc 1 had lovely games on it like Abe's Odyssey, which I was fascinated by. Overboard. Obviously that wonderful Dino demo. Some games didn't get on with Life Force Tenka. You play it a bit and then you'd end up exploding, didn't know why. I also bought Tomb Raider, which I played at PC at university, but obviously wanted to play it myself. No, I did not buy a memory card. Now with Oddworld, which is a game I also got quite early, not a problem because you either saved the memory card or gave you a password. Tomb Raider, not so good. You had to start again every single night, which is what I did until I saved up enough to get a memory card. It was the first system, I think, that really felt to me like it lived up to the advertising. I'd grown up with the ZX81. You had this amazing artwork in the advert, so same with the Spectrum, and the games were, not quite up to that standard. PlayStation, yes, they were. I have very fond memories of the Metal Gear Solid demo, which I played over and over and over and over again, while listening to Garbage's version 2.0 album, again, over and over and over again. Wonderful stuff. Fantastic system.
So there we go. That is PS1 nostalgia. Thank you so much for the guests appearing in this video. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I hope this brought back some nostalgic memories because Oddpod's never been about the history of something. It's always just been about the nostalgia of it. That beautiful feeling you get when you think back of the thing you had as a kid and stuff like that. So I really hope it brought back some nostalgic memories. And please, in the comments below, let me know your nostalgic memories of the PS1. Like, when did you get it? For Christmas, birthday? Did you win it in a prize? Did you get it in a weird way? What were your favourite games for it? Any other kind of like random nostalgic memories of the PS1? Just please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And again, thank you so much. Thank you for the guests. And thank you to the PS1 for bringing back so many nostalgic memories for all of us. Thanks. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.